The 140-pound Rottweiler that had put 7 men in the hospital was 3 feet from tearing out her throat when the pregnant maid did something that made Salvatore Benedetti, the most feared crime lord in Dallas, drop his coffee and forget how to breathe. She opened her palm, offered a piece of bacon and whispered, "Good boy." 3 minutes earlier, Reese Adler had been scrubbing pool tiles under the brutal Texas sun, her pregnant belly pressing against her uniform, sweat rolling down her temples. She had been invisible. That was the goal. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant a paycheck. Invisible meant her baby might actually have a chance. The scream came from near the garden wall. A handler named Rick, a burly man with forearms like ham hocks, stumbled backward as Cerberus ripped free from his grip. The leather leash snapped like thread. 140 pounds of black muscle and teeth exploded across the manicured lawn, heading directly toward the pool deck. Toward her, staff scattered like pigeons. The groundskeeper dove behind a topiary. 2 maids sprinted for the service entrance, their shoes clattering against stone. Someone shouted her name, but Reese could not move. Her body had locked into something older than thought, older than fear. The dog was closing fast. 40 feet. 30. His lips pulled back to reveal teeth that had torn through professional trainers, that had sent 3 veterinary specialists to the emergency room, that had ended careers and shattered bones. His eyes held nothing but murder. Reese dropped to one knee. Her hand went to her apron pocket where she had tucked 2 strips of bacon from the breakfast service. A habit. 1. A compulsion she had never been able to break, even after everything. Her fingers found the cold meat and she extended her arm, palm flat, positioning her body at an angle that presented no threat. She lowered her gaze to the dog's chest, avoiding direct eye contact, and made a sound deep in her throat. A specific clicking followed by a long, controlled exhale, the rhythm she had practiced 10,000 times in another life. Cerberus skidded to a halt 2 feet from her outstretched hand. His growl died, his hackles lowered by a fraction. Confusion flickered across his dark eyes, replacing the violence with something she recognized immediately: uncertainty. The dog had been trained to expect resistance, to anticipate fear, to punish both. He had no protocol for stillness, no response pattern for submission offered freely. Reese waited. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her baby kicked once, hard, as if sensing the danger. She did not move. Cerberus leaned forward and sniffed her palm. His wet nose brushed her skin. A moment passed that felt like a century. His tongue emerged, rough and warm, and he took the bacon from her hand with the gentleness of a lamb accepting grain. Across the estate grounds, behind 3 inches of bulletproof glass, Salvatore Benedetti watched his coffee cup shatter against the marble floor of his study. He did not notice. He could not look away from the impossible scene unfolding below. The pregnant maid, still on one knee, now running her hand along the neck of a dog that had cost him $4 million in settlements and medical bills. Cerberus, the demon his father had created, the weapon that answered to no one, was pressing his massive head against her palm and wagging his stubbed tail. Salvatore reached for his phone without breaking his gaze from the window. Reese heard the approaching footsteps but did not turn. She kept her attention on Cerberus, scratching behind his cropped ears, murmuring soft words that meant nothing and everything. The dog's body had relaxed completely. He sat beside her like a pet waiting for his owner's command. A memory surfaced unbidden, her hands covered in golden retriever fur at the Henderson Veterinary Behavioral Clinic, the smell of antiseptic and dog treats, then Dr. Gordon Crane's voice cutting through her pride like a scalpel. "You're done in this industry. No one will ever hire you again. I've made certain of it." That had been 6 years ago. She had buried that version of herself so deep she had almost forgotten the woman existed. A shadow fell across her. She looked up to find a man in a black suit, an earpiece coiled against his neck, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. "Mr. Benedetti wants to see you. Now." Reese stood slowly, her knees aching, her uniform stained with sweat and chlorine. Cerberus rose with her, positioning himself at her side like a guardian. The man in the suit stared at the dog with undisguised terror. "He won't hurt you," Reese said quietly. "Not unless you give him a reason." The walk across the estate grounds felt endless. She passed frozen staff members, gaping faces, a handler still clutching the broken leash with shaking hands. The sun blazed overhead, casting everything in sharp relief. The impossible wealth of the manicured gardens, the subtle positioning of armed men disguised as groundskeepers, the cameras tracking her every step. That moment of kindness would cost her everything she thought she knew about safety, but she did not know that yet. She only knew that her hands had remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The study doors opened onto a room of dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds, and the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something metallic she could not identify. Salvatore Benedetti stood behind a desk that probably cost more than every possession Reese had ever owned combined. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 40, with a face carved from Roman ancestry and eyes the colour of gunmetal. Those eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. An enforcer closed the door behind her and remained there, blocking the only exit. Cerberus padded across the hardwood and settled at Salvatore's feet, looking up at him with an expression that seemed almost apologetic, as if the dog knew he had revealed something that should have stayed hidden. Salvatore studied her for a long moment, the pregnant belly straining against her uniform, the calloused hands that had just done the impossible, the steady gaze that refused to drop despite the power differential screaming between them. When he spoke, his voice was soft, controlled. Far more dangerous than shouting. "Who are you, really?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Reese understood, with the certainty of someone who had survived impossible things before, that her answer would determine whether she walked out of this room or disappeared entirely. Before this story continues, tap that subscribe button so you do not miss where this is heading. Trust me, it gets wilder from here. Also, do not forget to comment the country you are watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let us continue. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled to breaking point. Reese felt the weight of Salvatore Benedetti's gaze, cataloguing every detail, the tremor in her hands, the protective way she cradled her belly, the defiance she could not quite extinguish despite her terror. "I asked you a question. My name is Reese Adler. I came through the Horizon Staffing Agency 3 weeks ago. I clean. That is what I do." Salvatore's expression did not change. He moved around his desk with the fluid grace of a predator circling wounded prey, each step deliberate, each movement calculated to remind her who held power in this room. "Horizon Staffing, yes." He picked up a manila folder from his desk and opened it with casual indifference. "They sent me your paperwork. Reese Adler, 28 years old. No permanent address listed. Emergency contact left blank. Previous employment marked as various." He looked up. A ghost, essentially. The kind of person who does not want to be found. Reese said nothing. Her throat had gone dry. "But here is what Horizon Staffing did not tell me." Salvatore flipped to another page. Reese Adler, graduate degree in veterinary behavioral science from Texas A&M. 8 years of clinical experience specializing in canine trauma rehabilitation. Published researcher. Rising star in her field. His eyes met hers. "Until 6 years ago when she was blacklisted from every veterinary practice in the state following allegations of professional misconduct. Allegations that were never proven but destroyed her career regardless." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She gripped the back of a leather chair to steady herself. "How do you—" "I know everything about everyone who enters my property." Salvatore closed the folder. "I know about the baby, 6 months along. Father is a man named Connor Welsh. Accountant. Gambling problem. Disappeared 4 months ago, leaving you with nothing but unpaid rent and a positive pregnancy test." Reese's vision blurred. She had spent months trying to find Connor, calling hospitals, filing missing persons reports, assuming the worst, assuming he had abandoned her like everyone else eventually did. "Connor did not abandon you." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" Salvatore set the folder down and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "Connor Welch owes my organization $217,000. Bad bets, worse decisions. He came to my people looking for an extension on his payments. When he could not provide one, he became collateral." The room spun. Connor was alive. Connor was being held somewhere because of gambling debts she had known nothing about. The father of her child had been a prisoner while she scrubbed toilets and wondered if he was dead in a ditch. "Where is he?" "Safe. For now." Salvatore's tone carried no malice, only facts. "His continued safety depends entirely on the next 5 minutes of this conversation." Reese understood. The trap had closed around her the moment she touched Cerberus. Every choice she thought she had made freely, the temp agency, this estate, this job, had led her here, to this room, to this man who held every card. "What do you want?" "I want you to do what you did on my lawn, but permanently. Live here, work exclusively with Cerberus, rehabilitate him completely." Salvatore uncrossed his arms. "In exchange, Connor's debt disappears. He walks free. You receive a salary that would make your former colleagues weep with envy, and your child grows up wanting for nothing." The offer was impossible. The offer was everything. "My baby," her voice cracked. "I am due in 3 months. I cannot." You will have access to the finest obstetricians in Dallas, a private suite in the East Wing, round-the-clock medical staff if you require it. Your child will be born in safety and raised in comfort. Salvatore tilted his head slightly. I protect what belongs to me. If you accept this arrangement, that protection extends to you and your child. Reese thought of the clinic she had lost, the sterile smell of betrayal, Dr. Crane's smug satisfaction as he signed the documents that ended her career. She thought of 6 years spent hiding, running, pretending to be less than she was. She thought of the baby kicking against her ribs, demanding a future she could not provide, on a maid's salary and broken dreams. She thought of Connor, wherever he was, alive because this man had chosen to keep him that way. If I say yes, I need guarantees. Written guarantees about my child's safety, about medical care, about what happens if I fail. You will have them by morning. And Connor, released within the week, with a warning about what happens if he accumulates new debts. Reese looked at Cerberus, still resting peacefully at Salvatore's feet. The dog that no one could touch. The dog that had chosen her for reasons she did not fully understand. Perhaps they recognized something in each other. Two broken things searching for someone who would not flinch. Yes. The word tasted like surrender and salvation combined. I accept. Salvatore's smile was small, controlled, revealing nothing of his thoughts. He pressed a button on his desk and the enforcer opened the study doors. Marco will show you to your new quarters. We begin tomorrow. Reese walked toward the door on legs that felt borrowed from someone else. Cerberus rose and followed her, his massive body pressing against her side like a promise or a warning. She could not tell which. His smile was the last thing she saw before the doors closed behind her, and she realized she had not asked what happened to the previous trainers. The morning sun flooded through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a suite larger than any apartment Reese had ever rented. She stood in the center of the bedroom, her small duffel bag at her feet, trying to comprehend the marble bathroom with its heated floors, the walk-in closet stocked with maternity clothes in her exact size, the king bed draped in sheets that probably cost more than her car. A gilded cage was still a cage, but she had never seen bars this beautiful. The head of household staff, a severe woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled tight, arrived at 8 to escort her on a tour of the grounds. The woman spoke in clipped sentences, pointing out amenities with the enthusiasm of someone reading a tax document. Indoor pool, gymnasium, library, private cinema, chef's kitchen available for requests at any hour. Reese absorbed none of it. Her attention was fixed on the details the woman did not mention. The gardeners whose pruning shears hung from belts designed to hold weapons, the cameras nestled in decorative stonework every 20 feet, the walls surrounding the property that rose 15 feet high and curved inward at the top. The estate covered 12 acres of manicured perfection, and every inch of it screamed containment. The training facility is this way. They crossed a courtyard where morning light turned the fountain spray into diamonds. The building ahead had once been a carriage house, its classic architecture preserved while the interior had been gutted and rebuilt. The woman opened the door and stepped aside. Mr. Benedetti's instructions are clear. You have full authority over training protocols. Staff will not interfere unless you request assistance. Reese entered alone. The facility was immaculate. Padded floors, professional agility equipment, climate control, observation windows along one wall. And in the far corner, inside a reinforced kennel, Cerberus watched her approach with eyes that tracked every micro-movement. She did not go to him immediately. Instead, she circled the room, letting him observe her, letting her scent fill the space. She noted the tension in his shoulders, the way his weight shifted forward onto his front paws, the subtle flattening of his ears when she moved too quickly. Hypervigilance, fear-based aggression, specific triggers tied to sudden movements and direct approaches. Someone had taught this dog that pain followed every human interaction. Someone had made him believe that violence was the only reliable response to uncertainty. She found a clipboard hanging near the kennel. Medical records, training logs, incident reports. The handwriting changed multiple times across the pages. Different trainers, different approaches, all ending the same way. Hospitalization, termination. One entry simply read, "Recommend euthanasia. Owner declined." At the bottom of the final page, a name, Giovanni Benedetti, deceased, primary handler and trainer for 8 years, Salvatore's father. Reese set down the clipboard and approached the kennel slowly, settling onto the floor 10 feet from the bars. She pulled a worn notebook from her pocket and began writing observations, ignoring Cerberus entirely. Minutes passed. The dog's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, confusion replacing aggression. "You are wondering why I am not looking at you. Cerberus's ears twitched because looking means challenging, and you have had enough challenges for one lifetime. The kennel door opened behind her. She did not turn, but she knew from Cerberus's immediate tension who had entered. Salvatore's footsteps were deliberate, measured. He stopped near the observation window, maintaining distance from both her and the dog. The previous trainers used shock collars, prong chains, physical correction. His voice carried no judgment, only curiosity. They said dominance required force, that an animal like Cerberus only understood pain. They were wrong, and yet you sit on the floor writing in a notebook, making no attempt to establish control. Reese finally looked up, meeting his gaze through the observation glass. Your father trained Cerberus using methods designed to create weapons. Fear and pain were his tools. The dog learned that humans meant suffering, so he attacks before suffering can begin. She closed her notebook. Your father created a survivor. I am trying to create a companion. There is a difference. Something shifted in Salvatore's expression, a crack in the marble facade, quickly sealed. He said nothing for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. Reese exhaled slowly and returned her attention to Cerberus. The dog had watched the entire exchange, his dark eyes moving between her and the door where his master had disappeared. He does not know what to do with us, she murmured. That makes 3 of us. Later, in her suite, Reese pulled out her phone and dialed the Horizon Staffing Agency. The line rang 4 times before connecting. Horizon Staffing, this is... I need to speak with my placement coordinator. This is Reese Adler. A pause. Keyboard clicking. Miss Adler. Yes, I see your file has been updated. You have been permanently placed with your current employer. Congratulations. What does that mean? I did not agree to permanent placement. It means your contract has been transferred directly to the Benedetti estate. We no longer handle your employment. Another pause. Good luck, Ms. Adler. The line went dead. Reese stared at the phone in her hand. Outside her window, the Dallas skyline glittered in the afternoon sun. Close enough to see, but impossible to reach. She pressed her palm against her belly, feeling her baby shift and kick. No going back, only forward, into whatever waited on the other side of this devil's bargain. If this story is gripping you, help it reach others with a like. Your support means everything. The first week passed in small increments of trust. Reese spent hours inside the training facility, never approaching Cerberus directly, simply existing in his space. She read books aloud. She hummed songs her mother used to sing. She ate her meals on the padded floor, letting the dog observe her at his own pace. By the 4th day, Cerberus stopped growling when she entered. By the 6th day, he moved to the front of his kennel when he heard her footsteps approaching. By the 9th day, he pressed his nose through the bars and accepted a treat from her open palm without hesitation. Reese documented every breakthrough in her notebook, mapping the architecture of his trauma. Loud noises triggered defensive posturing. Quick movements towards his hindquarters sparked immediate aggression. Direct eye contact from strangers sent him into attack mode, but soft voices calmed him. Rhythmic sounds lowered his heart rate. Her specific clicking and exhale pattern had become a reset button, pulling him back from the edge of violence. She began, leaving the kennel door open during their sessions, allowing Cerberus to choose proximity rather than forcing it. The first time he walked out and settled beside her on the floor, she had to bite her lip to keep from crying. Progress measured in inches felt like miles. She was not the only one watching. Salvatore appeared at the observation window with increasing frequency. Sometimes he stayed for minutes, sometimes for hours. He never entered during their sessions, never interrupted her work. He simply observed, his expression unreadable, his presence a constant weight she learned to ignore. On the 12th day, everything almost collapsed. Reese was running Cerberus through a basic recall exercise in the outdoor training yard. The dog trotted toward her on command, his movements relaxed, his stub tail wagging. A perfect repetition. She reached for a treat to reward him. The handler came around the corner too fast. His name was Victor, a thick-necked man who had worked the estate for years. He saw the dog off-leash and reacted on instinct, stepping forward with his hand raised, positioning his body in a dominant stance meant to establish control. Cerberus transformed in a heartbeat. The relaxed companion vanished, replaced by 140 pounds of coiled violence. His lips peeled back. A growl ripped from his chest, deep and deadly. Victor reached for the catchpole mounted on the wall. Do not move. Reese's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Lower your hand. Slowly. Do not look at him. That dog is about to. He is about to do exactly what you were telling him to do. You approached like a threat. He is responding to a threat. Lower your hand and step back. Now. Victor hesitated, his ego warring with his survival instinct. Reese stepped between him and Cerberus, positioning her body as a barrier. She made the clicking sound, followed by the exhale. Once, twice, 3 times. Cerberus's growl faded, his hackles lowered. He sat, his eyes still fixed on Victor, but the murder draining from his posture. "Walk away," Reese said quietly, slowly, no sudden movements. Victor retreated toward the facility entrance. The moment he disappeared inside, Reese exhaled and ran a trembling hand over Cerberus's head. "Good boy, such a good boy. You listened." He did not listen to Victor. Salvatore stood at the edge of the training yard, his arms crossed. Reese had not heard him approach. Victor approached like a predator. Cerberus responded accordingly. She straightened, keeping one hand on the dog's shoulder. "Your staff does not understand canine body language. They see a weapon and try to control it through force. That is why your trainers keep getting hurt." Salvatore studied her for a long moment. His gaze moved to Cerberus, who remained calm under her touch, then back to her face. "Teach my men what you know." The order surprised her. "I am not a trainer. I mean, not for humans. You are now." He turned toward the house. "I will have Marco assemble the security staff tomorrow morning. Victor is dismissed." "Wait, dismissed?" "He made a mistake, but mistakes near that dog cost hospital bills and lawsuits. He knew better." Salvatore glanced over his shoulder. "Unless you want to advocate for his continued employment." Reese thought of Victor's raised hand, his aggressive posture, the catchpole he had reached for. The man had almost undone weeks of progress in 3 seconds. "No," she said quietly, "I do not." The training sessions for security staff began the following afternoon. Reese stood before 12 men who looked at her pregnant belly with barely concealed skepticism. She ignored their doubt and spent 3 hours teaching them to read Cerberus's body language, to recognize stress signals, to understand that fear and aggression wore the same mask in traumatized animals. Halfway through the second session, nausea hit her like a wave. She gripped the edge of a table, her vision swimming, cold sweat breaking across her forehead. "I need," she swallowed hard, 5 minutes. "I need 5 minutes." She barely made it to the bathroom before her breakfast came back up. When she emerged, pale and shaking, Salvatore was waiting in the hallway. "Medical staff will be here within the hour. From now on, your sessions are limited to mornings only. Afternoons are for rest." He produced a small bottle from his pocket. "Prenatal vitamins. The doctor says you are deficient in iron and B12. Reese stared at the bottle. "You had my blood work analysed? I protect what belongs to me." He walked away before she could respond. She watched him go, the vitamins clutched in her hand, something shifting in her chest that she did not want to name. That evening, searching for a reference book in the training facility office, Reese found a folder that did not belong. It was tucked beneath a stack of veterinary journals, unmarked, deliberately hidden. Inside were photographs. Dr. Gordon Crane at a conference. Crane shaking hands with men in expensive suits. Crane standing outside a building she did not recognize. And on the final page, a document with her own name circled in red ink, connected by handwritten lines to Crane's photograph, and a single word that made her blood freeze. Leverage. Reese found him in his study the next morning, the folder clutched in her trembling hands. She did not knock. She did not wait for permission. She walked through the heavy oak doors and dropped the file onto his desk with enough force to scatter the papers he had been reviewing. "Explain this." Salvatore looked at the folder, then at her face. He did not seem surprised. He did not seem concerned. He leaned back in his chair and gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit down." "I do not want to sit. I want to know why you have photographs of my former mentor. I want to know why my name is circled in red with the word leverage written beneath it." "Sit down, Reese." Something in his voice made her comply. She sank into the leather chair, her heart pounding against her ribs, her baby shifting restlessly as if sensing her distress. Salvatore picked up the folder and examined its contents with detached interest. "I had you investigated the moment you touched Cerberus. Anyone who could do what you did represented either an extraordinary asset or an extraordinary threat. I needed to know which, so you dug into my past. I uncovered your past. There is a difference." He set down a photograph of Dr. Gordon Crane. "This man destroyed your career using falsified documents and manufactured accusations. He took your research, your reputation, your future, and when you tried to fight back, he made certain no one would believe you." Reese's throat tightened. Hearing the truth spoken aloud by someone else made it real in a way she had avoided for 6 years. "I know what it is like to have everything taken by someone who should have protected you." The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Reese looked up. finding something in Salvatore's eyes she had not expected. Not pity, understanding. My father built this empire through brutality, he continued. He believed that power came from fear, that loyalty could only be purchased through pain. He applied this philosophy to his business, to his enemies, to his family. Salvatore's jaw tightened. To me. Salvatore, he acquired Cerberus as a puppy, 8 weeks old. He saw the dog as an extension of himself, a weapon to be forged through the same methods he used on everything else. Starvation to create desperation, pain to create obedience, isolation to create dependency. His voice remained steady, but his hands had curled into fists on the desk. He taught the dog that pain was normal. He taught me the same thing. The air in the study felt heavy, charged with confessions that had never been spoken aloud. Reese saw him then, truly saw him. Not the crime lord, not the monster Dallas whispered about. The wounded child who had survived by becoming harder than the hands that hurt him.
I am sorry. The words felt inadequate, but she meant them.
I do not want your sympathy. Salvatore stood and moved to the window, his back to her, his silhouette framed against the morning light. I want your honesty. You have worked with Cerberus for 2 weeks. You have seen his responses, his triggers, his patterns. He turned to face her. When woman owes itself, can you truly heal him, or is some damage permanent? Reese considered the question carefully. She thought of the dog who had tried to kill her and now pressed his head into her palm, seeking comfort. She thought of the years of trauma embedded in his nervous system, the neural pathways carved by cruelty. The damage is permanent. She watched his expression flicker, something like resignation crossing his features. But that does not mean healing is impossible. Scars do not disappear. They just stop bleeding. Cerberus will always carry what your father did to him. But he can learn new responses. He can build new associations. He can become something more than his worst experiences made him. Salvatore stared at her. The mask he wore so effortlessly had slipped, revealing something raw beneath. Recognition, longing, hope. The expression terrified her more than his anger ever could, because it made him human, and human meant vulnerable, and vulnerable meant she could hurt him, and hurting him meant consequences she could not calculate. You believe that? His voice was quiet. You actually believe broken things can be rebuilt? I have to believe it. Otherwise, what is the point of any of this? He took a step toward her. The distance between them shrank to something dangerous, something that crackled with unspoken possibilities. Reese's breath caught. Her baby kicked hard, a reminder of everything at stake. The study doors burst open. A man Reese recognized as the head of security stood in the doorway, his face tight with controlled urgency. Mr. Benedetti, we have a situation. Salvatore's mask slammed back into place. The wounded man vanished, replaced by the crime lord who made federal agents nervous. What kind of situation? The Marchetti family. They hit our distribution center on the south side 20 minutes ago. 3 of our men are in the hospital. They left a message. What message? The security chief hesitated, his eyes flicking to Reese. They said this is just the beginning. They said the Benedetti empire is bleeding, and they intend to finish what they started. Salvatore's expression went cold, the kind of cold that preceded violence. Assemble the captains. I want everyone in the war room in 15 minutes. The security chief disappeared. Salvatore turned to Reese, his voice clipped and professional. Stay in your quarters until I send word. Do not leave the East Wing for any reason. Salvatore, what is happening? War. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. And you need to stay far away from it. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone in the study with the folder still open on the desk and the word leverage staring up at her like a prophecy. The lockdown came without warning. One moment Reese was walking toward the training facility. The next, she was being escorted back to her quarters by 2 armed guards who refused to answer her questions. Heavy steel shutters descended over the windows throughout the estate. Electronic locks engaged with mechanical finality. The entire compound transformed from luxury residence to military installation in less than 3 minutes. Cerberus was brought to her suite by a handler who looked pale and shaken. The dog pressed against her legs the moment he entered, his body tense, his ears tracking sounds she could not hear. What is happening? Reese demanded. Mr. Benedetti's orders. Stay inside. Do not open this door for anyone except him. The handler disappeared. The lock clicked. Silence swallowed everything. Reese moved to the window, peering through the gaps in the steel shutters. The grounds below had transformed into a war zone of controlled movement. Armed men in tactical gear patrolled the perimeter in pairs. Guards who had previously disguised themselves as gardeners now carried assault rifles openly. Vehicles blocked the main gate, their engines running, ready for rapid deployment. Raised voices drifted up from somewhere below. She caught fragments. Southside facility, 3 casualties. Marchetti sends his regards. The Marchetti family. The rivals who had struck that morning. Whatever had happened at the distribution center was only the beginning of something much larger. Hours crawled past. Reese paced her suite, unable to eat, unable to rest. Cerberus followed her every step, his anxiety mirroring her own. She tried to calm him with the clicking sounds and controlled exhales, but her own heart rate was too elevated to provide genuine reassurance. The door opened without warning. Salvatore stood in the doorway, and the sight of him made her breath catch. His suit jacket was gone, his shirt was untucked, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a smear of something dark across his forearm that might have been blood. His hair was disheveled, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. He looked like a man who had spent the last several hours at war. "You are safe." The words came out rough, scraped, raw. "The estate is secure." "What happened?" "I heard. The Marchetti family burned our Southside distribution center to the ground. 2 of my men are dead. 3 more are in critical condition." He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. They wanted to send a message. They succeeded. Reese sank onto the edge of the bed, her hand moving protectively to her belly. Why would they escalate like this? What changed? Salvatore's expression darkened. He crossed to the window and stared through the gaps in the shutters at his armed fortress. "You." The word hung between them like a blade. "What?" "The Marchetti family has informants everywhere. They learned about Cerberus's new handler. They learned that the dog who has terrorized my enemies for years is now following a pregnant woman around like a puppy." He turned to face her, and the anger in his eyes was not directed at her but at himself. "They see it as weakness. They see you as a vulnerability to exploit." Reese's stomach dropped. "This attack happened because of me? The attack happened because the Marchetti family has wanted my territory for years and finally found an excuse to move. You gave them that excuse, but the war was coming regardless." Salvatore ran a hand through his hair. "My security chief recommends removing you from the estate, sending you somewhere the Marchetti family cannot connect to me." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought something closer to panic. "You want me to leave?" "I said it was recommended. I did not say I agreed." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping directly in front of her. This close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight of decisions that cost lives, the rage he was barely holding in check. "You are not leaving. You are under my protection now, and that protection does not evaporate because enemies circle." His voice dropped, intense and absolute. "Anyone who comes for you comes through me first. Do you understand?" She should have been terrified. She was standing in front of a man who had spent the morning responding to a violent attack, whose hands might still carry traces of that violence, whose empire ran on blood and fear. Every rational thought screamed at her to run. She did not move. "I understand." Something shifted in his gaze. The fury softened into something else, something that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch impossibly gentle for hands capable of such destruction. "I will end this. The Marchetti family will learn what it costs to threaten what belongs to me." He turned and walked towards the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. "Stay in your quarters until morning. I will have food sent up. If you need anything, there is a guard stationed outside your door." He was gone before she could respond. Reese sat motionless on the bed, her mind racing through everything that had just happened. The attack. The lockdown. His fury and his gentleness existing in the same breath. The way he had looked at her when he promised protection. She realized with a clarity that should have frightened her that she trusted him completely, not despite what he was, but because of how he had chosen to be with her. The monster had shown her his wounds. The crime lord had made her safety his priority. The man behind both masks had touched her face like she was something precious. A weight settled against her legs. She looked down to find Cerberus pressing his massive head into her lap, his dark eyes lifted to her face. The dog who had never sought comfort from anyone was seeking it from her. She ran her fingers through his fur, feeling his body relax under her touch. "We are in trouble," she whispered, "both of us, and I do not know how to stop it." Cerberus's tail thumped once against the floor. Agreement or resignation, she could not tell. Outside her window, armed men continued their patrol, and somewhere beyond the estate walls, a war had begun with her name written into its foundations. If you are still with me right now, subscribe because this is only the beginning. The package arrived 3 days after the lockdown lifted. A guard brought it to her suite during the mid-morning hours, his expression neutral as he handed over the unmarked brown box. This was left at the service entrance. No return address. Security has already scanned it for explosives and contraband. Reese turned the package over in her hands. Her name was printed on a plain white label in block letters. Nothing else. No postmark, no shipping company, no indication of origin. Who delivered it? Courier service. Paid in cash, no identification on file. The guard left. Reese sat on her bed, the package resting on her lap, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. Cerberus watched from his spot near the window, his dark eyes tracking her every movement. She opened the box. Inside, nestled in crumpled newspaper, were 3 items. A manila envelope thick with documents, a stack of photographs held together with a rubber band, and a cheap burner phone, the kind sold at convenience stores for $20. Her hands trembled as she reached for the photographs first. The images showed her walking the estate grounds with Cerberus, sitting in the training facility, standing at her window, eating breakfast on her private balcony. Every photograph had been taken from a distance, through telephoto lenses, capturing moments she had believed were private. Someone had been watching her, someone with access and patience and purpose. The manila envelope contained documents she recognized immediately. Her graduate thesis, her published research papers, the formal complaint she had filed against Dr. Churchyard, Gordon Crane, and the falsified records he had used to destroy her career, complete with her forged signature on authorization forms she had never seen. Her entire destroyed life assembled in one neat package. The burner phone buzzed. Reese stared at the screen. A text message from an unknown number. Her finger hovered over the notification, every instinct screaming at her not to open it. But she had to know. She had spent 6 years running from her past, and now her past had found her. She opened the message. Hello, Reese. It has been a long time. I imagine you thought you had escaped me. You were wrong. I recognized you immediately when the Marchetti family shared their surveillance footage, the pregnant dog trainer living in the Benedetti estate. What a small world. Here is what is going to happen. In 2 days, Salvatore Benedetti is hosting a gathering of his organization's leadership. You are going to disable the security cameras in the East Wing at exactly 11 in the morning. The access codes are attached. If you refuse, I will provide your location to certain associates who have expressed interest in acquiring leverage against your employer. They are not gentle people. They will not care that you are pregnant. You have until the day after tomorrow to decide. Do not disappoint me again. Gordon. The phone slipped from her fingers and landed on the bed. Dr. Gordon Crane. The man who had taken her research and twisted it into weapons. The man who had smiled as he signed the documents that ended her career. The man who had stood in that conference room 6 years ago and told her she would never work in veterinary science again. His voice dripping with satisfaction as he watched her future crumble. The memory surfaced unbidden, that final meeting in the department chair's office. Crane sitting across from her, his silver hair perfectly combed, his expression radiating false concern as he presented the evidence of her supposed misconduct. She had tried to defend herself. She had produced her own documentation, her own records, her own proof of what he had really done. No one had listened. Crane had been too respected, too connected, too valuable to the department's funding streams, and she had been just a graduate student, easily discarded, easily forgotten. His smug smile as she left that office had haunted her for 6 years. Now he was back, and he wanted her to betray the only person who had protected her since everything fell apart. Reese pressed her palm against her belly. Her baby kicked, a reminder of everything at stake. Not just her life, not just her freedom, her child. Cerberus rose from his spot and crossed to her, pressing his massive head against her knee. His dark eyes held an intelligence that sometimes unnerved her, as if he understood more than any animal should. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. The dog had no answer. Neither did she. A knock at the door made her jump. She shoved the photographs and documents back into the box and kicked it under her bed, her heart racing. "Come in." Salvatore entered, his gaze immediately finding her face. Whatever he saw there made him pause. "You look pale. What is wrong?" "Nothing. Dia..." The lie tasted like ash, pregnancy hormones. The nausea comes in waves. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. She forced herself to hold his gaze, to keep her expression neutral, to hide the terror clawing at her insides. "The doctor can prescribe something stronger if the current medication is insufficient. I am fine, really. Just tired." He did not look convinced, but he did not press. "I came to tell you the gathering has been moved up, day after tomorrow. I need Cerberus on display, calm and controlled. Can you manage that? Day after tomorrow. The same timeline Crane had given her. Yes, he will be ready. Salvatore nodded and left. The moment the door closed, Reese retrieved her laptop and began searching. Dr. Gordon Crane. Current employment. Recent activities. Professional associations. What she found made her blood run cold. Crane had left academia 3 years ago. His current clients included private military contractors, security consulting firms, and organizations that operated in legal grey zones. News articles mentioned his name in connection with incidents in Phoenix, Houston, and Atlanta. Incidents involving violence, involving disappearances, involving people who had crossed the wrong employers. He had transformed from an academic predator into something far worse. And now he had her in his sights again. Reese did not sleep. She paced her suite through the early morning hours, the burner phone clutched in her hand, her mind cycling through impossible scenarios. Comply and betray Salvatore. Refuse and watch Crane's associates come for her baby. Run and abandon the only safety she had found in 6 years. Every option ended in destruction. Cerberus followed her every step, his massive body pressing against her legs each time she paused. He sensed her distress the way animals always sensed emotional turbulence, responding with presence rather than solutions. His warmth against her calves was the only thing keeping her grounded. The sun rose over Dallas, painting her windows gold and pink. She stopped pacing and stared at the light spreading across the floor, her hand resting on her belly where her baby shifted and kicked. She thought of Salvatore, the wounded man behind the monster, the crime lord who had shown her his scars and trusted her with his broken dog. The person who had looked at her destroyed career and seen someone worth protecting rather than someone worth exploiting. Crane wanted her to betray that trust. Crane wanted her to repay protection with treachery, to prove that she was exactly the disposable tool he had always believed her to be. She could not do it, not because she feared Salvatore's retribution, not because she calculated the odds of survival, because somewhere in the past weeks, trust had taken root in her chest, and she would rather face Crane's threats head-on than poison the one genuine connection she had built since her world collapsed. Reese grabbed the burner phone and walked out of her suite. The guards outside Salvatore's study tried to stop her, but she pushed past them with a determination that brooked no argument. She opened the heavy oak doors without knocking and found him standing at his desk, reviewing documents, his head snapping up at her entrance. Reese, what? She placed the burner phone on his desk. I need to tell you something, and you need to let me finish before you react. His eyes moved from her face to the phone and back again. He nodded once and waited. She told him everything. The package, the photographs, the documents from her destroyed career, the message from Crane, the demand to sabotage his security system during the gathering, the threat against her baby. When she finished, silence filled the study like smoke. Salvatore picked up the burner phone and read the message, his expression transforming into something she had never seen before. Cold fury, absolute and lethal, but directed entirely outward. At Crane, at anyone who had dared to threaten what he considered his. You came to me. His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. Instead of running. Why? Reese met his gaze without flinching. Because you are the first person who saw me as more than useful, who protected me without wanting something in return, who looked at my broken pieces and did not try to weaponize them.
And you trust me? Knowing what I am?
Knowing what I do? I trust that you have never lied to me. I trust that you kept your word about Connor, about my medical care, about my safety. I trust that when you say you protect what belongs to you, you mean it. Salvatore set down the phone and crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I want everything in return. His hands rose to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the fury still burning in his eyes. But not like this, not through coercion. Not because you have no other options. I have options. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. I chose this one. Something shifted in his expression. The fury softened into something raw and hungry. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. Then we end him together. You will pretend to comply. Send confirmation that you will disable the cameras. Crane will believe his leverage worked. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And when his people walk into my estate expecting vulnerability, they will find annihilation instead. You can protect the gathering and set a trap at the same time. I can do anything when properly motivated. The distance between them collapsed. His lips met hers, gentle at first, then deeper, carrying the weight of everything unspoken between them. She tasted coffee and danger, and something that felt terrifyingly like hope. Her hands found his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palms. Cerberus's bark shattered the moment. They broke apart as the study doors opened. The security chief stood in the entrance, his expression professionally neutral despite what he had clearly interrupted. "Mr. Benedetti, the captains have assembled for the preliminary briefing." Salvatore straightened, his mask sliding back into place. "I will be there in 5 minutes." The security chief disappeared. Salvatore turned back to Reese, brushing a strand of hair from her face. 36 hours. Stay close to me. Trust no one except my inner circle." He pressed a brief kiss to her forehead. "And when this is finished, we will have a conversation about what happens next." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing in his study with her heart racing and the taste of him still on her lips. The counteroffensive had begun. The gathering filled the East Wing with power and expensive cologne. 37 men in tailored suits occupied the grand dining room, representing every arm of Salvatore's empire. Captains, lieutenants, financial controllers, and enforcers gathered around a table that had hosted 3 generations of Benedetti leadership. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Reese watched from the observation room adjacent to the main hall, Cerberus pressed against her legs. Her hands trembled as she checked the clock. 10:58. 2 minutes until she was supposed to betray everyone in that room. 2 minutes until the trap sprung shut. She entered the security codes Crane had provided, watching the cameras in the East Wing flicker and die one by one. To anyone monitoring from outside the estate, the security system had just gone blind. What they could not see were the backup systems Salvatore's technical team had installed, recording everything to hidden servers, tracking every movement through redundant sensors. 11 o'clock. The cameras showed offline. Reese exhaled slowly and waited. The infiltration team breached the perimeter wall at 11:03, 6 men in tactical gear, moving with military precision through the gardens toward the East Wing entrance. They believed they were invisible. They believed the pregnant dog trainer had given them a clear path to the heart of the Benedetti organization. They were wrong. Salvatore's men emerged from concealment the moment the infiltrators crossed the threshold. Gunfire erupted in controlled bursts. Shouts echoed through the corridors. The element of surprise belonged entirely to the defenders. Reese grabbed Cerberus's collar and moved toward the designated safe room, a reinforced chamber behind the library with walls thick enough to stop rifle rounds. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she navigated the service corridors, following the route Salvatore had drilled into her memory. She was 10 feet from the safe room door when the voice stopped her cold. "Hello, Reese." Dr. Gordon Crane stepped out of a shadowed alcove, a pistol leveled at her chest. He looked older than she remembered, his silver hair thinner, his face carved with lines of bitterness. But his eyes held the same cold satisfaction she remembered from 6 years ago, the pleasure of a predator cornering prey. "You thought you could outsmart me." He moved closer, keeping the weapon trained on her center mass. "You thought your criminal boyfriend could protect you from consequences. You were wrong. You have always been wrong." Cerberus growled, his body coiling into readiness. Crane's eyes flicked to the dog, and something like recognition crossed his features. "Ah, yes, the famous Benedetti weapon. I did my research on this animal. Fascinating conditioning work. Giovanni Benedetti was a true artist of behavioral manipulation." Crane smiled. "I also obtained his training protocols, the original command phrases he used to program this beast." Reese's blood turned to ice. "Gordon, do not." Crane spoke 3 words in Italian, his pronunciation precise and deliberate. Words that carried the weight of 8 years of brutality, of pain and starvation and violence encoded into neural pathways. Cerberus's entire body went rigid, his growl died, his eyes changed, the intelligence and warmth draining away, replaced by something mechanical and murderous. The dog she had spent weeks healing disappeared, overwritten by the weapon Giovanni Benedetti had created. "Kill," Crane commanded. Cerberus turned toward Reese, his lips peeling back to reveal teeth that had hospitalized 7 men. His muscles coiled, his focus locked onto her throat. She did not run. Running would trigger the prey drive and guarantee her death. Instead, she dropped to one knee, exactly as she had done on that first day by the pool. She extended her hand, palm flat, fingers loose. She lowered her gaze to his chest, and she made the sound. The clicking followed by the controlled exhale, the rhythm she had practiced 10,000 times, the pattern that bypassed language and spoke directly to the part of him that remembered safety. "Cerberus." Her voice was steady despite the terror flooding her system. "I see you. I know you are in there. You are not a weapon. You are not his creation. You are mine. The dog froze, caught between two competing programs. His body trembled with the conflict, old conditioning warring against new pathways, violence fighting trust. Crane laughed. Sentiment will not override 8 years of programming. The dog is a machine. He does what he was built to do. Reese ignored him. She kept her focus on Cerberus, on the intelligent eyes struggling to surface through the mechanical rage. You chose me once, on the lawn when you could have killed me. In the training facility when you walked out of your kennel and sat beside me. Every day since you have chosen trust over fear. Tears streamed down her face. Choose me now, please. Choose us. The trembling intensified. Cerberus's growl rose and fell, his body a battlefield between past and present. Reese did not move. She did not breathe. She simply waited, offering her hand, offering herself, trusting that love was stronger than pain. Cerberus lunged, not at her, past her. 140 pounds of muscle and fury launched at Gordon Crane with the precision of a guided missile. The gun discharged, the bullet burying itself in the ceiling as Crane crashed backward under the dog's weight. His scream cut off as Cerberus's jaws closed around his forearm, pinning him to the floor with controlled pressure. Not killing, containing, waiting for permission. Reese rose on shaking legs and looked down at the man who had destroyed her career, who had threatened her child, who had tried to turn her healing into another weapon. He chose, she said quietly, and so did I. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. Salvatore appeared, his shirt splattered with blood, a cut above his eyebrow seeping crimson. His men flanked him, weapons drawn, but the fight was already over. His eyes found Reese, moved to Cerberus holding Crane immobile, then back to her face. It is over. His voice carried exhaustion and triumph. He is done. All of them are done. Reese's legs gave out. Salvatore caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. Cerberus released Crane and pressed against them both, his massive head pushing between their bodies, seeking connection, seeking reassurance. The three of them stood in that corridor, bloodied and trembling and alive, while security teams swarmed past to secure the prisoner. She had chosen trust. The dog had chosen love, and the monster holding her had chosen to burn down anyone who threatened what belonged to him. The federal agents arrived at the estate 3 days after the failed assault. They took Gordon Crane into custody on charges that spanned 6 states: conspiracy, extortion, accessory to multiple violent crimes, and enough evidence of illegal consultation work to guarantee he would never see freedom again. Reese watched from Salvatore's study window as they loaded him into an unmarked vehicle, his wrists cuffed, his expression hollow with defeat. The falsified records have been submitted to the Texas Veterinary Board, Salvatore said from behind her. My lawyers expect a full reversal of the disciplinary findings within 60 days. Your license will be reinstated, your reputation restored. 6 years of exile erased by paperwork and the right connections. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow, like a wound that had finally closed but left numbness in its place. Thank you. Do not thank me. Thank Crane for being sloppy enough to leave a trail. The second vehicle arrived that afternoon. Reese recognized Connor the moment he stepped out. Thinner than she remembered, his face carrying the gaunt look of someone who had spent months in captivity. He saw her standing on the front steps and froze, his expression cycling through shock, relief, and desperate hope. Reese. He moved toward her, his hands reaching out. I am so sorry. I wanted to contact you. I wanted to explain. They would not let me stop. The word halted him mid-stride. Reese descended the steps slowly, one hand resting on her belly, Cerberus following at her side. She studied the man she had once planned to build a life with, the man whose gambling addiction had dragged them both into this world, the man who had disappeared and left her alone with a pregnancy and no answers. You knew about the debt before you vanished. You knew they were coming for you. Connor's face crumpled. I thought if I just had more time. You left me, pregnant and terrified and completely alone. Her voice carried no anger, only clarity. You made choices that put our child at risk. You let me believe you were dead rather than face what you had done. I can make it right. We can start over. I will get help for the gambling. I will be the man you deserve. Reese looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth she had been avoiding for months. Connor was not evil. He was weak. He was the kind of person who ran from consequences and hoped someone else would clean up the mess. She had spent years making excuses for that weakness, believing love could compensate for reliability. She was finished believing. Leave, Connor. Your debt is paid. You are free. But we are finished. Reese, please. The car will take you wherever you want to go. Do not come back." She turned and walked into the house without looking back. Cerberus remained at her side, his presence steady and grounding. She heard the car doors close, the engine start, the crunch of gravel as Connor drove out of her life forever. Salvatore found her in the library an hour later, staring at shelves of books she could not bring herself to read. He sat beside her on the leather sofa, close enough to touch but not forcing contact. "He is gone. I know. Are you all right?" She considered the question. "I will be." Salvatore reached into his jacket and produced a small velvet box. Inside was a key, ornate and antique, attached to a chain of white gold. "This opens the east wing. Your wing permanently." He met her gaze with an intensity that stole her breath. "I am offering you a place at my side, not as an employee, not as a guest, as a partner, equal in everything that matters. Salvatore, I am also offering protection for you and your child, the best education, every opportunity, a family that will never abandon them when things become difficult." He pressed the key into her palm. "But only if you choose it, only if you want it. I will never coerce you into staying." Reese looked at the key, at the man who had shown her his scars, at the future he was offering, a future built on trust rather than desperation, partnership rather than dependence. She closed her fingers around the key. Yes. 8 weeks later, Reese walked the estate grounds in the golden afternoon light, her belly round and heavy with the final weeks of pregnancy. Cerberus padded beside her, his gaze calm, his body relaxed. From the terrace, Salvatore watched them both, a cup of coffee in his hand and something soft in his expression. Dallas whispered about her now, the pregnant maid who had tamed the untouchable Rottweiler, the woman who had captured the heart of the most dangerous man in Texas. They called her the Queen of the Benedetti Empire, though she had never asked for the title. A new maid approached hesitantly, her uniform crisp, her eyes wide with fear as Cerberus turned to assess her. Reese smiled and gestured for the girl to kneel. "Lower your gaze, extend your hand, palm flat. Let him come to you." The girl obeyed, trembling. Cerberus sniffed her fingers, then pressed his head into her palm, accepting her presence. "See? He only looks terrifying. Underneath, he just wants to trust someone." The girl laughed nervously, stroking the dog's fur with growing confidence. Reese looked up at Salvatore on the terrace, at the life she had built from the ashes of the one that had burned. That is how a pregnant maid became the queen of an empire, by understanding that the most dangerous things are not the ones that bite, but the ones that never learned how to trust. If my story moved you, I would be grateful to hear your thoughts in the comments. I would really appreciate it if you could share your thoughts about my videos. Your feedback helps me improve and create even better content for you. Thank you for being here.